Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about Prashant Kishor rejecting Congress's offer to join the party. We also talk about PM Modi accusing the states of not reducing the VAT on fuel. But first, we talk about a case which once again raises questions and concerns about how the ruling party is clamping down on its dissenters and political opponents. Last week on Thursday, Gujarat MLA and prominent Dalit leader Jignesh Mevani, who is one of the most vocal critics of the BJP government in the state and the centre, was arrested over an alleged tweet he made. Now, Mevani is actually an independent MLA, but last year he had pledged his support to the Congress party. And what is noteworthy is that Mevani was arrested in Gujarat by the Assam police, which later flew him into the state. He was taken to the Kokrajhar district, which lies in western Assam. Indian Express's Tora Agarwala, who reports on Assam, tells us why he was taken there.
So basically, he had allegedly tweeted something where he had said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi considers Godse, that is Nathuram Godse, as God. And a BJP leader from Assam, from Kokrajhar district, had seen this tweet and filed a complaint in Kokrajhar district saying that this was a tweet which may promote enmity between different communities and religions and that Mevani should be booked.
So because the complaint was filed from the Kokrajhar district, the case came under the Assam police. After he arrived in the district, Tora says that Mevani's bail plea was rejected and he was sent to judicial custody for 3 days. After these 3 days, a court hearing took place. But since the arguments went on till late in the night, he was again sent to jail, and the court said that it will reserve the hearing for the next day, which was Monday.
So the court did grant him bail on Monday, and the magistrate in her order had also said that there's no reason why this person should be under arrest anymore and that the investigation officer can carry on investigating this case with the person out of jail as well. And she had also written that just for tweeting the sentence that Mr. Narendra Modi considers Godse as God, that was not enough to keep somebody in jail. So that's what the order said. But even as this order was being prepared and even as we found out that bail was granted, the lawyers said that they had an inkling that he would be arrested on another case, on a fresh case from file in another district. So even when, instead of being very celebratory, the lawyers were like, we think something is off because policemen from another district are already here outside the court at Kokrajhar. And actually, just maybe 30 to 45 minutes after we figured that he's gotten bail, he was picked up by the Borpeta police. Now, Borpeta is another district which is close to Kokrajhar in Assam. And he was picked up on a fresh case and taken to Borpeta district.
So just to be clear, Mevani got bail in one case, but then immediately after got arrested in another case from another district in Assam.
So he doesn't even get time to walk free even for a few seconds. So he's taken to Borpeta for, in this fresh case which has been registered against him. Again, like the first day, it was, for us journalists, it was really difficult to figure out what this case was. Why had he been suddenly arrested? And even the lawyers did not have information. All the lawyers knew was that he was booked under sections 294, which is basically obscene act in a public place, and 354, which is assault on a woman with the intent to outrage her modesty, 353, which is assault on a public servant as to deter him from discharge of duty, and 323, which is voluntarily causing hurt. So the lawyers just knew that these are the sections he was arrested under because the warrant said so. But they did not know why, what the context was, where did he suddenly assault a public servant, or whose modesty did he outrage. They had no idea. They just knew of the sections. And in the meantime, he was taken away to Borpeta. For journalists also, it was very difficult because, again, it was very frustrating, but no police official was coming on record or saying anything.
But eventually they did speak and gave an explanation for why and how Mevani was rearrested, and why the charges against him included assaulting a public officer and a woman with the intent to outrage her modesty.
So the complaint this time was from a woman police inspector from Kokrajhar district, and I had told you earlier that he had landed in Guwahati on Thursday morning, and from Guwahati he was being taken to Kokrajhar by road. So in her complaint she is basically saying that during that ride from the Guwahati airport to Kokrajhar, when they were in this government vehicle, she along with two other police officers and Mevani, apparently Mevani had misbehaved with her and uttered slang words at her. I'm directly quoting from the complaint. And when she asked him to behave properly, he apparently got agitated and used more slang words. She goes on to say that he pointed his finger towards me, tried to frighten me, and pushed me on my seat with force. And he thus assaulted me during the execution of my legal duty of being a public servant and outraged my modesty by touching me inappropriately while pushing.
This is the complaint that has been registered in Borapeta. And the reason why it has been registered there is because the alleged assault took place while the police vehicle with Mevani in it was passing through Borapeta.
So to reach Kokrajhar from Guwahati, you have to go through Borpeta district. So she is alleging that the assault took place when the vehicle was crossing this place called Shimla Guri in Borpeta district. And that is why the complaint is registered in Borpeta district. And that is why the Borpeta police have arrested him now.
After this arrest, Mevani's lawyers again tried to get him bail, but the request was denied, and the court remanded him for 5 days in judicial custody. His case will now be heard again on Saturday. Meanwhile, opposition parties, including the Congress and several Dalit leaders, have condemned his arrest and have called it unconstitutional. Now, after he was rearrested and was being taken to the Borapeta district in a police van, he managed to say this to reporters.
This is a conspiracy on the part of BJP, RSS. BJP and RSS are doing this to tarnish my image and to target me systematically. They want to destroy me. They have killed Rohit Vemula. They targeted Chandrasekhar Azad. Now they are targeting me. They have serious problem with Dalit and Ambedkar movement. We believe in Sanskriti. We believe in Constitution. Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar was targeted by Savarkar. Modi is targeting Jignesh Mevani.
As we have mentioned earlier, Mevani has been one of the most vocal critics of the BJP and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Though besides being a firebrand leader and a politician, he also has a multifaceted personality. When we spoke to Indian Express's Parimal, who reports on Gujarat for the paper, he told us about him.
He has worked as a Gujarati journalist in Mumbai for a few years. He's also a lawyer and has done practice at Gujarat High Court. There is a literary side to his personality. He's a scholar on the works of a legendary Gujarati poet Maris, who is also known as Galib of Gujarati.
Mevani is also very well known among activists in Gujarat. And Parimal says that he first came to prominence in 2016 when he emerged as the face of Dalit agitation following the public flogging of some Dalits in the state. And right now, he has a major following in Gujarat.
So, mainly youths from the major following of Mevani. I mean, youths from different classes of the society like Dalits, tribals, Muslims, other backward classes that we call OBCs. And apart from that, he is also immensely popular among the class 3 and class 4 employees of the state government, apart from working class as a whole in the society, in the state. And after getting elected as the independent MLA, he has traveled quite widely, not only in Gujarat but across the country, campaigning mainly against the BJP and the RSS in different state or Lok Sabha elections. He also shares a close bond with Kanhaiya Kumar, the firebrand leader from Bihar. And if we talk about his performance in Gujarat Assembly, he has been raising a lot of issues that make the ruling BJP quite uncomfortable.
क्या आप जो गरीब जनता कल शाम से यहां पर आई है, इस गरीब जनता को देने के लिए मोदी के पास झूठ और वादों के अलावा कुछ भी नहीं है। इंडिया को वाइब्रेंट बनाने की बात तो छोड़िए, स्किल इंडिया, मेक इन इंडिया का बकवास भी छोड़िए। ये आदमी हमको इस मुल्क में यहाँ की गरीब जनता को 2 वक्त की रोटी देने को भी तैयार नहीं. Shame on you, Narendra Modi. Shame on you.
So basically, as I told you, he's quite vocal about his criticism of BJP and RSS. So as a politician, he's seen as anti-BJP and anti-RSS since beginning. In fact, in Gujarat, people believe that, including leaders of the BJP, that there are very few persons who cannot join BJP in the Gujarat state, and Mevani tops that list. He is basically an idealistic person, but as a politician, he is also quite aware of striking certain compromises. I remember him once telling me that as a politician, if you try to be ideologically pure, then you are politically struck. And so politics is an art of navigating with least compromise. Over the year, he has emerged as a political brand which is in complete opposition to BJP and RSS.
And next we talk about Prashant Kishor and the Congress party. For some time now, the grand old party has been facing an existential crisis. It has been performing miserably in elections, and it seems to be slowly losing relevance. And so, in order to revive it, it had been courting the election strategist Prashant Kishor. The leadership wanted him to join the party and was hoping he would make the changes that the party needs. But for the past 10 days, the entire affair became a public spectacle, and in the end, Kishor rejected the party's offer. In a tweet, Kishor said, quote, "In my humble opinion, more than me, the party needs leadership and collective will to fix the deep-rooted structural problems through transformative reforms." Unquote. In this segment, we talked to Indian Express's Manoj CG about why things didn't work out between Kishor and the Congress party. And the first question that needs to be answered is, why did the party approach Prashant Kishor of all people?
To quote Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot here, Prashant Kishor is now a brand. He has worked with from BJP to the Shiv Sena to the DMK to the YSRCP, and even with Congress also. He worked with Captain Amarinder Singh in Punjab during the last assembly elections, even with Trinamool Congress. So he has a track record of working with parties and contributing to their victory in the elections, barring twice. When he last worked with the Congress in Uttar Pradesh in 2017, he could not do any magic there. And recently in Goa, he could not wave his magic wand. But otherwise, he has worked with 9 parties from 2014 to 21, and 7 of them emerged victorious in the elections.
So considering this track record, Manoj says that it made sense for the Congress to reach out to him to make changes within the party, especially since it has been losing badly in elections across the country. But Kishor, as we know, declined to be part of the Congress party, and more importantly, he did so in public. Now, earlier this year, Kishor had given another presentation to the Congress party, an 85-page presentation which is now in the public domain.
Some of the leaders in the Congress have been telling us that the presentation that he made to the Congress top leadership this time is an improvement on that last presentation, an 85-page presentation. So in that presentation, one of the most striking aspects was his bid to tell the Congress to address the leadership issue that the party has been facing. So in that presentation, he had given 2 models, wherein one is Mrs. Sonia Gandhi continuing as the Congress president, Rahul Gandhi taking over the parliamentary party leadership, in a way delinking his association with the party. He should be fronting the parliament arm of the Congress, and Sonia and Priyanka Gandhi Vadra in a much more important role as General Secretary organization and all. But he also had given an alternate model, wherein a non-Gandhi steps in as the Congress president, and the rest of the Gandhis, Sonia, Priyanka and Rahul, continuing in various roles. He believed that that will have an impact. So this time, Congress leaders tell us that he also pitched for Priyanka Gandhi Vadra as the Congress president. So this one aspect of addressing the leadership issue has been high on his agenda.
Apart from this, Kishor also wanted structural reforms, including the party to function in a much more democratic way and for elections to take place at all levels. But Manoj points out that some of these changes that Kishor suggested were in fact changes that had already been suggested by senior leaders within the party back in 2020. These changes were suggested by a group of 23 rebel leaders, who are now referred to as the G23.
Their suggestion was the election should be held at all levels. The Congress constitution itself says that the Congress working committee, the apex decision-making body of the party, there should be 12 elected members and the rest, I think 13 also, nominated by the Congress president. But since 1996, the Congress never had held elections to the CWC. Ever since Mrs. Gandhi took over as the Congress president in 1998, she has been nominating members of the Congress Working Committee. So the widespread grievance or complaint is that these nominated members are yes men or yes women. They always do what the leadership wants them to do. So this deliberative body, CWC, which used to have very heated exchanges, very vigorous debates, that doesn't happen anymore. So whatever the leadership wants, in leadership in the sense whatever the Gandhis want, the CWC agrees with that, just gives a stamp of approval to that. So this was a demand made by the G23 leaders.
He says that even the G23 leaders were earlier part of the same system, but they feel that now things need to change. Though not everyone in the party shares this opinion. That's why many in the party declined to accept the changes that Prashant Kishor was suggesting, especially the leaders who are close to the Gandhis.
It's an interesting and strange situation where 23 of your senior leaders are telling you that you need to do these things, carry out the reforms to, make the party relevant again, to revive. Then you don't agree with them. Now we have got an outsider, strategist. He has given a set of suggestions. Now you're not listening to him as well. So it's a very strange situation where the party wants to change, but they are aiming for the low-hanging fruit. Without changing much, tampering much, it wants to change. Now, to be fair to the Congress party, the argument that their leaders give is that, see, this Prashant Kishor has worked with BJP, Trinamool, YSRCP, DMK, Shiv Sena. Where did he bring in structural reforms in any of these parties? Did he tamper with the BJP's system in 2014? Did he change the DMK style of functioning or the TMC style of functioning or the YSRCP style of functioning? No. Then why should he want to do that in the Congress? And one interesting argument given by a leader was that, many of the young leaders who were seen part of Team Rahul, who the Congress considered as its future in many of the states, be it Sushmita Dev, Jiten Prasad, RPN Singh, Jyotiraditya Sindhya, even they, after the long association with the Congress, left the party. So Prashant Kishor walks into the party, disrupts the whole system, disrupts the whole hierarchy. And what is the guarantee that he will stay with the party? At least till 2024.
So this is what one side thinks. While the other side says that the reason that Prashant Kishor has to suggest radical and structural changes to the Congress is because the party is in a very deep crisis, unlike other parties that Kishor has worked with.
You don't need to change the structure in the TMC or the YSRCP or even in the BJP in 2014 because they were not in as bad as a shape as the Congress is in. So there is a need for reforms and change in the party. Unless something is broken, there is no need to get it fixed. So there is something broken in the Congress which needs to be fixed. But the other section argues, no, you cannot let him, hijack the party and run everything to the ground. So it was a catch-22 situation for the Congress in that sense. The Gandhis wanted him in, but it is another enigma that it is often said that the Gandhis run the party, their writ runs large. And if they wanted somebody in, and if even they couldn't do it, they convinced the leaders, then who is actually running the party?
Meanwhile, because Prashant Kishor rejected the Congress publicly, it has put the party in a rather embarrassing position. But Manoj points out that the first tweet about this came from a Congress leader himself, Mr. Randeep Singh Surjewala, the head of Congress's communications department.
He tweeted saying Prashant Kishor has declined our offer. So many leaders felt very surprised. Why should the party publicly tell the world that, see, this election strategist has turned down our offer? And of course, he tweeted a few minutes later and gave a sermon also to the Congress that, see, you should have the will to carry out transformational reforms. And also, almost all the Congress leaders agree that it was bad optics, that you made a spectacle out of this engagement with him.
So it seems that the road ahead for the party still looks uncertain. Many have suggested changes, but a large part of the Congress seems unwilling to implement them.
So as Kishore himself said, there should be a will to carry out some of these suggestions, some of these radical reforms, which many in the party have been talking about. Every leader, given their vast experience, will have some set of suggestions. So some may be at cross purposes with another, but even then you need to sit together, put all these suggestions into one basket. That's precisely the exercise that they did, and cull out the actionable ones, and which can then be implemented. But provided the leadership should have the will to tell the other leaders that, see, the party is in a very bad shape, you need to carry out some of these reforms and then go ahead. But again, this big question is, what about the Gandhis? Even Kishore had suggested a non-Gandhi as a Congress president. But if the Gandhis are not willing to accept that suggestion, then why would the other leaders agree with the rest of the suggestions? So it's a difficult situation for the Congress to now roll out these changes, which the party itself wants to implement, but it never seems to happen.
And in the end, we talk about fuel prices. Yesterday, during an interaction with chief ministers on the emerging COVID-19 situation in the country, Prime Minister Narendra Modi came down hard on opposition-ruled states and said that some states did not reduce VAT on petrol and diesel despite the excise duty cut by the centre last November. He also accused the opposition-ruled states of doing injustice to the people by not transferring the benefits of the move to them. He said that many states such as Maharashtra, West Bengal, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Jharkhand and Tamil Nadu, for some reason or the other, did not listen to the central government, and the citizens of those states continued to be burdened.
अब जैसे उस समय 6 महीने पहले कुछ राज्यों ने बात को माना, कुछ राज्यों ने नहीं माना. अब कई राज्य जैसे महाराष्ट्र, पश्चिम बंगाल, तेलंगाना, आंध्र प्रदेश, तमिलनाडु, केरला, झारखंड, किसी न किसी कारण से उन्होंने इस बात को नहीं माना और उनके राज्य को, नागरिकों को बोझ कंटिन्यू रहा. मैं इस बात में नहीं जाऊंगा कि इस दौरान इन राज्यों ने कितना रेवेन्यू कमाया, लेकिन अब आपसे मेरी प्रार्थना है कि देश हित में आप पिछले नवंबर में जो करना था, 6 महीने डिले हो चुका है, अब भी आप अपने राज्य के नागरिकों को वैट कम करके इसका बेनिफिट पहुंचाइए.
Now, in response to these statements, several opposition leaders have criticized PM Modi for asking state governments to reduce VAT on fuel prices. This includes West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who called the interaction with Modi one-sided and misleading. She insisted that her government had spent 1,500 crore rupees in the last 3 years to subsidize petrol and diesel prices in the state. Also joining in the chorus, Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray stated that the centre owed Maharashtra 26,500 crore rupees. Thackeray also accused the centre of a stepmotherly treatment to Maharashtra and said that the state government was not responsible for the rise in prices of petrol and diesel. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.